All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the group chat. I am Mark Monroe, accompanied by my wonderful hosts, Charles, Tunde, Prentice, and Victor. What's so funny, y'all? Like, real talk. Somebody was coming for you last week, Tunde, and, he was asking for all the smoke, and then all of a sudden, he ain't even here. So,
yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Feel like a champion that I am. I'm gonna take my victory right now. No, I'm pretty sure he has a good reason why he's not here. But you guys will hear my argument, and you are not gonna hear his argument. So consequently, I win. I mean, do you see it any other way? Do you disagree?
In the words of the great debaters, resolved.
Thank you.
How you doing, Unc? We missed you last week, but how are you doing this week?
I'm glad to be back. All is well. I watched the episode, and it was quite interesting. I saw a lot of, I'm gonna call it fire and brimstone going on.
Really? I was just lighting the match. Like we haven't even caught fire yet, but we might catch fire this week.
Well, let's go. What's up, Prentice?
How you doing over there, Prentice?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Good. It's just another pre-summer day in Houston. Low 80. Good stuff.
The low 80s.
Oh wow. And I'm noticing all the characters, but we're gonna address that in a second because look, you very happy for a person who's calling himself Dr. Doom today. But all right. And then we got Loki, aka Levic, over here. How you doing over there in the DMV, sir?
I'm doing great. Weather's nice. Great day. Can't complain.
All right. Okay. So y'all, last week, as Uncle Charles said, he said that the fire was lit. We got to keep this fire going because I'm about to throw some gasoline on this. I know that we're all going to throw some gasoline on it. So, since Tunde jumped out talking about he was mentioning some stuff last week that apparently D'Angelo is unfortunately unavailable to be with us this week. So, hey man, I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you rock first. So we talking about real estate you're the only one on your name today. So
hey, I'm over there looking at your background. I'm like, that is the place to be. It's really nice over there. Yeah.
What is it? Maldives? That's the Maldives.
Oh, Maldives. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's too distracting, if it's too distracting, I can turn it off.
Nah. Hey, no, I'm just wondering.
I can turn it into something else because I don't know. I'm not choosing peace today. I'm choosing violence. So
I'm just saying in the chat, they always say that you have riddles and you have hints and so forth. So I was trying to figure out, is that some kind of strategic
in the words of K-Dot,
message?
In the words of K-Dot, forget a double entendre.
Okay, there we go.
This is correct.
All right. Well, so to get us started or kicked off, right? Okay. My whole thing is this. Not one point would I ever think that my advice or what fits me works for everybody. I've come to realize that everyone is different, and you got to learn or get advice from different people, but make sure that you go to to the corners while you're quiet in your room and really search your heart and really figure out what really works for you. Anyone can give you financial advice. Anyone can give you life advice. Advice is hey, be with this person or don't be with that person. But at the end of the day, it's what really works for you, right? Now the debate was, I wanted to preface all of that. The debate was, if you were given 200 grand, would you put it in the S&P 500, or would you invest in real estate? I believe your portfolio should always be a diversification. Now it depends on your age, it depends on your status and so forth. Me particularly, I would be looking to do more real estate. Why is the case? S&P 500 gives you, what, 6%, 7%, whatever you want to call it. It could compound in 5 years, right? Mark,
Well,
it
that's
sounds
average.
like
The S&P 500 is average compounding rate is 7% on an annualized basis.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I want to make sure that I'm, stating the right thing. So
Okay.
with that 200, what would that be after said and done? Now, compared to imagine I bought a house, say 4 years ago, and my house was, or maybe I bought it at 500 grand at that time. Now, obviously, the rate of increase, the increased rate for houses, it also fluctuates, right? But just giving you that example, I think my house appraised to about over 1.2, for example, in that span of 4 years. Now, depending on where you are versus, that also matters, right? And depending on where you are in life, that also matters. Now, if I'm a young student, and this is what I tell my nieces, my nephew, my cousins are way younger than I am, why am I renting an apartment even when I'm in college, when I can, engage with a couple of friends or engage with, parents and say, hey, let's come together as a community, let's purchase a house, let's rent it out. Or let's purchase a house, a fixer-upper that, we can improve on. Now, keep in mind, I'm saying all of this, I understand interest rate varies. When I bought my first home, I think it was like 2.5%. My second home was like what, 3.7. So I'm not saying in this day and age, go buy a home immediately and paying 7% in your interest rate, right? But what I'm saying is that depending on the situation, I think you have to diversify your portfolio. You also have to look at the market. Not all houses are equal. Houses, in California is different from, housing, Missouri or whatever the case might be, right? So to me personally, if I was in that situation and the interest rate made sense, and I think that was a big key right there that you were talking about. If you're doing it in this present day, the interest rate does not make sense, I would save. I would, take a step back to when it makes sense, and I would purchase that home.
Yeah, so you're trying to walk through multi-timelines of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay.
I'm trying to be very honest and practical, right?
That's fair. That's fair.
Because if you, depending on the timeline, right? The rate of increase for houses, depending on where you are, could be only 4%, 5%, on the average. And then there's some years that it's jumped leaps and bounds, right? I think Vic, you could probably talk more about insurance and real estate and so forth. So it all varies, right? And I can't just just bucket myself and say I'm always going to do real estate. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not going to go with real estate. But me personally, I don't think our generation, the younger generation, I don't even think we as Black folks care so much about real estate. They'll rather rent. There's people that, and there's nothing wrong with renting. I mean, I think I saw something about female basketball players renting $8,000 a month on an apartment. Now that's ridiculous, because especially WNBA, that you don't get that much money like the NBA players, right? I'm just using that as an example. There are other people that, they overpay on renting when you can join money together with, your siblings or, your friends that you trust and buy a home and then rent that home or whatever the case might be. So not once all size fits all is all I'm trying to say. So
that's fair.
Yeah. Well, me personally, I ain't doing it. And here's why.
You're not doing what? You're not buying.
You give me 200,000, I'm not buying a house. But here's why.
Okay.
Because if the S&P returns an average of 7% a year, national average for homes is 4%, sometimes 4.5%, somewhere in there. Obviously, if you live in like California, that might go up to like 6 or 7 potentially, depending on location. Overall, it's 4%. But then you got to account for the cost of owning a home. Aside from just the mortgage, you got maintenance costs. Do I even want to talk about insurance? Not really. That scares me. Like, that's scary right now.
Okay.
You might not even have insurance the way these things are going. They might cut you off. Obviously, you have your property taxes, things like that. And there are tax breaks associated, of course, which helps offset the decrease in how much you're going to get on the appreciation of the home. But if you're taking me, 26 years old, you give me 200,000, do I want to take that and invest it and just get a relatively steady return without a whole lot of extra responsibility and costs associated with that? I'm taking that all day over having increased, basically cutting away my future cash flow to own a piece of property. That's just how I see it. So me, the way I would do it, I would rent first, but keep it within your means. I'm not renting $8,000. This is never going to happen. But I might rent for, up to, depending on, what do they say? Like about 30 of your income is what you should aim for, somewhere in there, until you get your money right. Or shoot, if you're investing 200K in the S&P after 10 years, it's almost 400. Doubled your money. Congratulations. Now you can probably pay that down payment with all profit. You can
Rule 72.
Yeah, and still keep it below your need, or at least within your means, preferably below. But now you have more of a cushion, especially with the way that like inflation is and everything, and like the wages aren't keeping up. So I think for a younger individual, at least in my experience, if D-Lo's here, he probably would agree, I'm assuming, but I don't know. I feel like it makes more sense to rent and invest that money in the meantime, and then go for homeownership later down the line.
So I have some data for you. So let's say if it's over a 4-year span, right? So let's take it as it stands currently right now. So I did some breakdown. So let's take it if you have a home price of, let's say, $800,000, and you take that down payment of, let's say, $200K. The loan amount is, let's say, $600,000, of course, not including the closing costs and all that other stuff. But let's say that you have a 6% annualized interest rate, which is, decent. It ain't no 3.2 or any of those types of things. So essentially, like it varies. And then we'll also say property taxes, 1.2% annually, homeowners insurance, 0.3%, and then maintenance and repairs, 1% annually, right? Okay, so we have all those things. So you're looking at, say, for example, the mortgage interest as it pertains to over those 4 years, you're paying $144,000. That's just off of mortgage interest alone. And then on top of that, property taxes is another $38,400. And then on top of that, homeowners insurance is $9,600. And then, of course, maintenance and repairs over a 4-year span. If you have to, take in any type of sunk costs or anything like that, that's $32,000, $8,000 a year. So then you're looking at about $324,000 as it pertains to extra costs that you'll ultimately take in as it pertains to owning a home. And that's just over a 4-year span. So if you're looking at it in comparison to the S&P 500 on an annualized basis of 7%, then you're looking at about $62,000 as it pertains to money gain. So which means, and again, all of these things that I also did, I also adjusted it for inflation as well. So like, for example, if I didn't have inflation, then we'd probably be looking at probably about $92,000. So you're losing about $30,000 given the inflation costs, even in the earnings as it pertains to S&P 500. So when I say that, that means that essentially cost of capital also eats into, say, for example, your potential return from the S&P 500. But then again, it's like, look at what it looks like as it pertains to just the home ownership in today's economy. You're coming out like $323,000. That's the cost. So it's not only just the cost, and that's what we were talking about like last week, where it's the cost of affordability to not only buy the home, but it's also the cost of affordability in which that 200K, like we may as well just light it on fire.
Basically, in the words of the little kid that made this famous, you broke.
Big broke.
Sure. So yes, sure. You broke.
Today, in your defense, that's probably what I would do. If I got 200K, I'm probably gonna take 150 of that. I'll throw it into the S&P 500. I'll take 50 of that. Try to collaborate with some other like-minded people. I'm not buying a house. If we want to buy
an investment property,
if we want to buy
get a duplex or a quadplex,
or something like that, okay, I'll take 50K. Put that, with the rest of you guys. We go buy a duplex. I'll do that. But just buying a straight up house where you got all that, just on you, I'm not in this market today. I wouldn't be doing it.
And that's the point. We're
Yeah,
saying in
I
this
think
particular market, in this
Right.
market.
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Tunde.
mean, if
No.
go ahead.
Tunde was going to say something.
If you limit it to just this market with the interest rate, like I said, probably doesn't make sense. But I still think I would take house over. And when I talk about house, I'm not talking about house that I'm just gonna go live in. When we're talking about investment in the S&P, we're also talking about investing in real estate, right? Which to me, when you invest in real estate, you're not doing it for the now, but you're doing it for the future, where it will equate into cash flow, depending on how best you structure it. Just like Charles was saying, if you were to partner up with friends or whatever it is, even if it's townhomes or if it was duplex or what is it? Help me out.
Quadplex.
Quadplex. Yeah. Or whatever the case might be. Even if it was a single home, for example, this is what has always killed me. And I've always learned this from a young age, is that why would I purchase a home that I don't have a basement in it that I can, block off and then rent out? Or move downstairs and then rent out the house itself. And so when I pitch, or when I tell my nieces and nephew and so forth, is that if you're in the position, if 200K is all you got, don't put all of that in the house. And yes, you are going to have to maintain the house or whatever it is. But I've seen a colleague purchase a home for 50K. That was only 16 years ago, right? It was a fixer upper to the utmost degree, right? The house is paid off, right? Because he purchased it, he had to fix it. Maybe let's say even put 100K into it. That's 150K, for example. Now all he has to do is just collect the cash flow and the rent, right? And what I think a lot of young folks think about is that, I'm putting all this money, I'm investing all this money, I'm not getting that return, because we want that popcorn mentality, that gratified instant, cash flow, when you can set yourself up for the future on how do I get this cash flow coming in once the house is paid off. I don't have to worry about that. Yes, are you still going to be paying income taxes? I mean, property taxes. I'm sorry about that. Yes, you will be. But if you have people in that rental unit, and you taking that money to pay, the expense, and you have leftover for your cash flow, and you duplicating that, I don't see anything wrong with that. You can now take that and have your safety net in your S&P 500, whatever the case is. Now there's also scenario. I'm sorry, Prince, it's just one more point I just want to hit, because I came in locked and loaded, right? The other thing, the other point that I want to hit in is that no one is asking you to go buy like $1 million home, a $500,000 home, or whatever it is. You can cut your coat according to your size. It could be a fixer-upper where you actually learn. There's this beautiful thing called the internet, where you can really learn a lot of stuff about even how do you do your renovations, how do you get your licenses, how do you learn all this stuff. Now I'm not saying you're going to be an expert, and even if it's not your first swoop, that's okay. You can hire the right people by doing your research, because if you hire the wrong people, you could be screwed. But if you fix that house, can you imagine flipping it and selling it? You have twice the amount that you initially had. I know it's as easy said than done, but I'm saying we get so scared and so nervous about real estate. Oh, it's going to be all this cash, gutting tool where we can really reshape our mentality and see how can it better work for us. That's just my piece.
So I think, real quick, I think real estate is a valuable piece of the pie. However, right now, if you're stepping out and buying real estate, you're buying Tesla at $479 in December right now. That's my personal opinion right now. I mean, with the interest rate and the lack of actual supply, right, and the way the prices are jacked up right now, it's insanity to jump into that market. Then you're not even talking about just that, right? if you go and buy yourself a fixer upper, something that's really good, somebody's trying to get it off their hands, that fixer upper is gonna kill you because lumber is owing up, right? Remember tariffs? Remember that part? Yeah, materials, right? Labor's gonna go up because everybody else is gonna raise their prices because I'm like, I got a lap dance on the weekend for eggs, so I definitely am gonna raise my price to get this house together. So
you say you got a what?
No, let him continue. Let him continue to keep cooking.
We'll get the Omaha. Let's go with that. But anyway, yes, we'll just put that out there. But no. Like when you put all that stuff together, it becomes a drain, right? And I think yes. If I'm going to step into the real estate market, especially if I do not have a family and kids currently, I'm gonna step into the duplex game, right? Fix it up. Rent out the other 3 places, right? And I can curate and select the people I want to live around me, and I can cut down all the riffraff, make money, build. But I'm not going to do that until I get any kind of clarity on what's going on. And the funny thing is that the mortgage rates are going down, but not for the right reason. So that's not that's not a sign for me right now to be like, yeah, let's hop on in to lock myself into an investment.
Even with the appreciation, like over the past 2 years, even in Cali, certain places, the house values aren't really going anywhere. Yeah. I've had homes come in like a year and a half ago, and they've lost, over 100,000 in value within that span of time. And then with the lumber costs, what do you think that does to your insurance premium every year? When they rerun that number, it looks real ugly after a while.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. Come on.
I'm still sitting on over 14%, in my rate up. So
okay, I mean, I'm glad that you said that. Look, I'm glad that you said that because
the replacement cost a killer.
My turn. All right, so let's just do some quick data. I'm gonna take that same 200K and I'm gonna do it over a 10-year, 15-year, and also a 30-year investment. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, so for a real estate investment, that would be 310, about 300, like let's say 311K, S&P 500, 524K or 525K as it pertains to investment over a 10-year span. So the difference there is that the S&P comes in favor at $214,000 over real estate. Over a 15-year basis, real estate comes in at 387K. S&P 500 would be at 850K as it pertains to return. So you're looking at 463,000 as it pertains to in favor of the S&P 500. And this is based upon historical data, by the way. Thank you to Y charts. And then on top of that, we got 30-year, which would place real estate investment at $749,000. S&P 500 would put you at $3.61 million, which literally blows the shit out of real estate. Then on top of that, well, the other part where you mentioned house flipping, which is actually pretty dope because your average rate of return on ROI for house flipping is actually at 28.7. So that's actually not good. That's actually not bad. That's actually very, very good. If you can do that, because the average return or profit from house flipping was about $70,250 per foot. So it's not bad. But here's one little caveat. And that one little caveat is in 2016, house flipping was at 49.2%. And then in 2024, the rate of return of that is now at 28.7%. So the profit, the ROI is actually in decline as it pertains to house flipping. And there's a few things as it pertains to regional variations and everything else. But the main factors as it pertains to influencing the profitability is one, market conditions, renovation costs, and then the holding costs. Those are the three things that ultimately can get you caught up. But I mean, outside of that, like Tunde, look, you all know me. I don't really do investments as it pertains to real estate. That's not my forte, never will be. I salute to a lot of folks who do that, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, it's very much so challenging. And then when I look at the average rate of return, no matter how you try to even scratch it, it's like, the biggest wealth transfer since, let's say, the 1960s has ultimately been the S&P 500. Because now, don't get me wrong. Now, if you've owned a house in your family since the 1960s, or hell, I'll even take you up to 1995, 99, then you're eating. The problem is, and this is where I'm about to start cooking, is that all those families that have owned houses and that they've had family members that have had and owned those houses and then that have now passed away. Tell me, how many of those black families still own those houses?
Not a lot.
The problem.
I can tell you that right now. It's not. Yeah,
it's not many.
I mean, that's every day. Same. Yeah. Even if they own it free and clear, like, yeah, my dad passed in this house 50 years ago,
and then they sell it. They
can't maintain it even without the mortgage, and their kids can't take over the house. It's crazy.
Well, look in my neighborhood right now, it's a black neighborhood, right? It's been established for 50, 70 years, right? There are houses right now where they had grandparents, right, or parents, and they died, and they can't maintain the house, right? They can't physically maintain the house. They can't even get the yard cut consistently, let alone pay, taxes and all that stuff. And it's like, you want to hold on to it, right? But they don't even have anything now to hold on to what they have. And so that's where the vultures come. They sweep in and we go, oh, it's a nice.
Because they'll give you a beautiful cash offer and everything else, and then ultimately you're on the first thing smoking, and then ultimately you probably
there's a lot of investors coming in.
Because if you can't afford it, a property becomes an albatross. It doesn't become an asset, and that's the whole game right there.
Yeah, and if you don't pay those taxes, it goes up for auction real quick, and next thing you know, it's gone. And last but not least to this whole thing, Tunde, you made a good statement. There's a lot of education on YouTube about how to fix up a house.
Correct.
You actually think D-Lo got enough sense to go out there and figure out how to fix up a house? He's smart. In tech, you putting a hammer and nails in D-Lo's hands? No. I love him to death.
That's my boy. I'm gonna have to stick up for him. I believe
now you gotta stick up for each other.
Now you want to stick up?
I'm gonna stick up for every single one of y'all. But like I said, from day one, if y'all get into a fight, I am not throwing my fist no more.
This right now.
If it's debate, of course I'll stick up for y'all. I truly believe
go let us get stumped out unless we debate.
No, I'll tell you why. Why did you pick that fight, bro? No, when I was younger, I actually signed a contract never to fight again. And I am not about to break that contract. But anyways, I truly believe that is the thing, is that
that's new.
We sometimes look at it and say, there's no way I can hold a hammer, or there's no way I'm going to actually do this. And that's fine, but you can do your research to make sure that you can get a vendor or subcontractor that is not just gouging you, right?
So that's more you make Mark's point. That's more outlay going out that you don't.
No, but I know, but okay, check it out. I agree. That could be more overhead, but what I'm saying is, if you do your research well, you can speak their language. You know what it actually takes. If you're not the one doing the touch labor, you can tell them, nah, this ain't right, man. This is not, I'm not paying you for this. This is what is actually going to pass inspection. This is not going to pass inspection. And I think
how much is your time in aggravation worth, Tunde? When you're dealing with these people, like how much is your time in aggravation worth?
I've had my share of it. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, but for some reason that your camera's going out, so you may have to come back in.
So basically, I came back. I won this match. Tunde go somewhere. D-Lo not gonna fix up no house. Okay.
Oh.
He trying to pay somebody to fix up the house. He gonna go broke. Let him fix up there, engineer.
I've seen a lot of fixer-upper shows, and I just see that a lot of times, like, they have a vision as it pertains to how much is it that they're going to put down towards a house, and then they find out, like, this is the reason why I watch those shows. I always watch it because I'm like, look, one, you underbid, or like you underbid as it pertains to what you thought your budget was going to be. So now you're about to find out that there's other costs, and I'm always just like, I'm just waiting.
The whole show is the FAFO episode. Yeah. Every 30 minutes. Like, hey, man, let's flip some houses. It's pretty good.
Like, every time when I think about that, I'm like, okay, peace of mind, S&P 500. S&P 500 all day. Like, look, I just move it over and just be like, okay, Like I could just walk around and kick rocks.
Yep. Okay. Next topic.
Okay. Next topic. And I know that Tunde is going to join us in. So, all right, look, we got a lot of. I got some shit to address because if you got kids watching right now, this might be one where you might want to send them outside.
Oh.
I've held my tongue. I've held my tongue for a very, very long time. I've kept quiet. And, you know, I sat back and watched. And then, of course, you know, we have our group chat where it's like, you know, people send stuff into the chat. And yeah, I'm done. So, like, this should give you enough time to, like, if the kids are no longer in the room, good. If you look, you run the risk as it pertains to them sitting in and listening in on the conversation. So let's give it a countdown for what? 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. It's time that we start addressing the niggatry that's been like literally transpiring within the culture, or just us as it pertains to Black people. Because, you know, one of the things that I mentioned last week was like, you know, this thing of moral equity, right? And how is it that we've been riding on this moral equity for so long? Well, I think that the moral equity, I think that we can all officially say that that's officially run out. Like we are out of moral equity, you know, now. And, you know, one of the things that really grinds my gears to just ultimately pissing me off is the fact is, and keep in mind, we're going to cook, but we're also going to be solution based. Like we'll bring forth our ideas as it pertains to solutions. Mm-hmm. And I'll give a prime example, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why we started the Come Up series was because of the fact that Jolyn had mentioned to me when I was sitting there in the supercharging station at the time, before Elon Musk went crazy. I literally said, you know, this is quite the undertaking that you're asking me to participate in. Mm-hmm. And she was like, yeah, but we can do this. Like, think about all the things in which that we can like literally have an impact on to make change. And I said, 'tis true. And I've always been a type of person to like, you know, want to make change. And I'm like, but was it in me enough to like literally say, okay, hey, I'm going to put my name and everything else on the line in order to do so, just to be a part of that change? And then I started like, you know, I started looking at the lay of the land. You know, I started looking at the lay of the land. And honestly, I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like what I saw. I honestly believe that there was just, you know, there were some people that were doing some pretty dope things, you know, and there was others in which that you could easily just see that, okay, you're just here for a money grab. And so for me, I'm like, okay, hey, like the reason why was because of the fact that the thing that was always on my mind from day one was in the sense of value. Like, are we providing value to one another? Are we providing value as it pertains to like building ourselves to a place where we can be competitive within the spaces? Is the information in which that we're providing to people enough so that way they can go outside and get it done, get started, get moving, like use the data accordingly? And it's crazy to me because of the fact is I'm really struggling, guys. I'm really sitting back and asking myself, do we as a people really, really want to be competitive? Do we really want to be successful? And I'm not talking about in sports because, I mean, look, we've got that down on lock for now. But, I mean, look at the rest of the world catching up. I'm just talking about, like, us as African Americans, like, you know, Black folks. Are we at a place in which that we are literally, truly trying to progress? Or are we just still stuck in this ignorant cycle where we're just always just looking to just be entertained by the same dumb shit, the same dumb conversations, the same things that ultimately always separate and divide and everything else? And I'll be honest with you, Uncle Charles, I'll take my medicine too. I played a part in that. I think that like there was a part that I played as it pertains to creating some division and everything else, and as it pertains to that journey. I'll take my medicine. But then it's just like, okay, well, now that we've all taken our medicine, it's like, have we learned anything? Or are we just still perpetuating the same type of BS and not moving forward? I'll use an example. I'll throw it out there on the table. Since we've been talking about tech for quite some time, it's the world that I live in. It's the world that's ultimately going to make a lot of folks very, very wealthy and everything else, if you're part of it. I do not see us there. I do not see us a part of any of the significant decisions that are being made as it pertains to artificial intelligence, as it pertains to the next wave of innovation. I don't see any of those things. I don't. And that's the part that scares me, because if we're not visibly if we're not visibly seeing people, and you and I, Uncle Charles, you probably participate in these types of meetings. Prentice, you participate in some of these meetings. You know, Tunde, you probably have seen some of these things. And the crazy part about it is, it's sometimes a lonely island when we're in these spaces as it pertains to progression. And yet we don't see it. And Vic, I'm sorry if I'm also leaving you out by accident. I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean it. Hey, if you're part of these conversations, if you're having them, look, bro, kudos to you, because I'm proud of you always and forever. But it's just like, okay, well, like, because this is we're going to see a massive wealth transfer. We're probably going to see the next frontier as it pertains to the massive wealth transfer. And we're not even just talking about wealth. We're also going to see power in these spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest fear that I have is that all the dumb stuff, all the conversations, and also people just running to listen to other people in which that have spent no type of time in any type of industry, they're going to listen to them. And essentially it's like they're never going to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kept saying, like think about it. And this is why I say I don't think that people really listen. We did a whole series on executive education, right?
Yep.
We did a whole series on executive education. We did a whole series on School of Investing. I brought even folks within industry, to literally come and talk. Like before quantum, literally became a real big thing. I actually brought you a person, not even here in the United States, but somebody who was out of the country that was talking about quantum and building quantum computing.
Hey, I was in on that interview. I remember that. Shout out to the man.
For real. And I'm like, yo, deaf ears. And I get it to a certain degree. There's a learning curve and everything else. But here's the thing, though. A kid can go get their ass kicked on the basketball court and be back on the very next day wanting more.
Yep.
A person could tell a kid that you suck at sports and the kid will want to compete.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is for one person to tell you that essentially that you don't belong here in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, and the crazy part about it is they're not even telling you that you don't even belong here. They're more so showing you, because the fact is you're because I believe that we're showing them that we don't belong there.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to, because we're choosing not to participate. But then everybody has an opinion about everything, but nobody is actually building anything. Now I'm going to start that off as a preface, but don't worry. I'm going to turn up the temperature in this episode. Want to hear you guys' thoughts real quick on that one.
Go ahead, Vic. You were going to say something?
Okay.
I'll
just speak for my generation.
Okay. Well,
can't speak for anybody else.
I'll go as the elder statesman here in tech. And it has been a lonely road for, I think, 25 years of my career. The last 5, I feel like more and more people who look like me are participating. But when I say participating, I get what you're saying, Mark. We're participating, but we're not leading. And I was watching something Saturday, matter of fact, from BBS News or whatever the news thing is. And they had the lady who's the CEO or chief product officer from Coursera, the learning thing. And she basically says that all these people who are enrolling in AI, ML, large language models, full stack development courses are basically from other countries. It's not even from the US. It is literally 80% of their students are from other countries outside of the US. But then you talk about us, and we've had these discussions, with a lot of our cousins who, what should my child go into? What should they be looking into or whatever? It's just not your child. It should be you too. Because if you want to keep your job or you want to accelerate where you're going, all the things that Mark has been talking about, AI, ML, it's going across every industry. It's just not simply in tech. Even my sister, who's a doctor now, is like, they're doing surgeries where the robot is doing everything. The doctor's just giving it instructions, and it is a little scary how far behind, and literally 6 months to a year can put you 5 years behind, in my own opinion. Like, you can lose that much ground real quick. Mm-hmm. Now, I know we're going to, get to the solution piece here, but Mark made a point. We have our, kids who will break a leg, bust a head, whatever, to get out there on that field, run up and down that court. People tell you can't do it. You're going to go shoot 100 free throws, whatever. But the minute somebody tells you your code is stink or it is not really that good, you ready to give up. Mm-hmm. Nobody said it would be easy, but it's just not a natural thing that we have gotten into that we need to make a natural and a common thing in our community. It's just that simple. And I know, I remember 2 or 3 years ago when Mark was doing the thing we would do every Christmas and had people's heads hurting, the Matrix. we would tell people, man, look, get your kids into some of these summer boot camps. Okay. Mm-hmm. Instead of letting them run to the football boot camp, let them run to the coding boot camp. Let them run to the IT boot camp, And even for me, 30 years in, I'm always trying to learn something new that I don't know because I don't want to be left behind. I want to be able to talk about this stuff. So it is a challenge in our community and in many communities. You can see now that it's becoming a challenge, but I'll pass it on to Prentice or Tunde or Vic, whoever may want to, go from there before we get into the solution stand piece. But guys, we got it.
We're gonna throw some more. We're gonna cook a little bit more, but don't worry, the solution will come.
I'll more. Yeah. So go ahead, Vic. You get it, bro. Go ahead.
I just remember this literally happened last week. I was sitting there watching the NVIDIA GTC keynote, and it's so crazy because I'm like, in the background, I hear my roommates listening like March Madness. And I'm like, dang, I wonder how many people my age that look like me are watching this instead of March Madness or Pop the Balloon videos, whatever.
Netflix.
And it's like, dang, like, is it? And I noticed this at first, like way back in 2020, when I first started learning like options and everything. And I was trying to teach people, hey, man, you might want to check this out. This is what I'm learning. It's pretty dope. And out of maybe 40 to 50 people I tried to, get on board, there's only 2 people that actually listen. One of them should have been here today, but it's D-Lo. The other one's my boy Mike. Shout out to Mike. They're the only 2 people that listen out of all those people. And I realized very quickly, like, there's just like a disconnect in terms of, I guess you could say, interest or incentive to want to learn those things. I don't know why, me personally, but it seems like a lot of people are more interested in being entertained or distracted than they are learning and improving and getting to where they need to be. And I really don't think a lot of people in my generation care to be those faces and be those leaders, to be straightforward. I mean, I don't really think they care that much. They'd rather be an athlete or influencer or whatever you name it. Which,
but what is it that they're influencing? Like that's. Oh, continue. We'll get to that. We got some shit to address. Like we got some shit to address.
Yeah, I'll let Prentice rock because I don't know. I'm just
They're influencing. Look, the currency of the time is attention. All right. There is so much going on every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week of your life, and so many different funnels slapping you in the face. Everybody's fighting for your eyes. Everybody's fighting for your attention.
That's the new real estate game.
Yeah. The information, like I said before, the information age is over. It's the attention age. And that's the reason why we have the person in the White House we have right now, because plus or minus, he commands attention. All the stupid, extra different things that happen, or even great things, or whatever things, it's always a headline. It doesn't matter what it is, right? It's something different. And that's part of what it is. It's like they're always there. So, but to that point, and I will kind of connect that tangentially, I'll come back to that. There are multiple different angles that you can look at here when you're talking about why we are essentially cooked in this AI game at the current moment, right? There are angles you can look at from the sense of I've talked about before, where a lot of people are not creative and they can't, if they can't see it, it's really hard for them to be it. They're not pioneering in that way. Right. And if a lot of us don't see anybody, right? Because they're even the one or two people that are in the game, we're not very visible, right? We're not popping balloons, right? We're not popping bottles. We're not popping whatever you need to pop to, trend nowadays. So there's that part, right? But then you also have the lack of resources and the lack of support in the resources. I talked about last week where Indian culture support these, counting and spelling bees, right? Coding labs and the coding things in the summer, they're few and far between. All right. They're not everywhere because they're not able to be funded everywhere. And they're definitely not supported or passed around in the community, right? Because they are, for better or for worse, people have not been communicated the end goal of what coding is. All right. A lot of times, people will start off with to get your kid into coding because coding is the future.
Let's say software. Like that's the word.
Yeah.
So that way
software, right?
Yeah. We want to start programming.
Right. Yeah. We want to start creating things from the digital realm and our own ideas and getting our own ideas out and owning our own property and our own IP. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
We have, and then you have so many different facets. Then you have structural, systematic assets where it's ideas where it's large tech companies will spend way more money to specialize and build up other universities where the H-1B visa, people come in, right? Because you'll have in Indian universities where it'll be specifically set out for software development, right? Like entire mass things where that's what they are, right? We don't have software development schools sponsored by Google, which is why, or maybe we do, right? But definitely not to the degree of where they're pumping out thousands of these graduates every year, where these people are in a specialized thing, right? And again, we can't sit around and wait on people to do it, but these are all the things that exist, right? And these are all the things that we have to factor into when we're talking about creating a solution that will work for us and get around that. And so, again, many other factors over and over and over. But we got to want it, and we got to acknowledge that there are real barriers in front of us that other people aren't in front of, right? It takes both. We're not in a place where we want it, and we're definitely not in a place where we even recognize why we should want it.
Can you name some of the barriers? Give me give me your top three barriers.
I would say, and everybody's gonna jump on me for this, but there's a reason. Information, for one. Information is widely available, but to my point, information is so ubiquitous, so widely available. If you don't have a guide, you don't know where to look. And there are plenty of people that are far less aware of what's going on than any of us or any of our kids or any of our sphere of influence at the current moment, right? And so it has a large majority of them. They don't have a clue what's going on their phone. They don't have a clue. They just discovered ChatGPT the other day, right? Because they're not writing essays. They're not doing anything else. You know, they haven't seen it. And so information is one, because access is only as effective as as much as your knowledge is to access it, right? Like, it's all available, it's free.
So then how do you so how do you explain kids that are coming from third world countries where essentially it's like they're picking up picking up these tools, they're having access to the same like resources and everything else as pertains to information, and yet they're choosing
the same thing
to get ahead.
So part one is the thing I said before, where our companies invest way more money into creating pipelines for them in that sense. But the second part, and I know you're going, is that culturally it has been rocked into them. And I said that mentioned earlier, right? Again, certain cultures celebrate intellectual pursuits. Certain cultures celebrate, you stepping up and pioneering things and having an indirect culture. Also, being a refugee kind of forces you to be an entrepreneur, because half the time you got to come out here and make your own job. And so those cultural things could need to be instilled in us, but they don't exist. And again, we're just talking about the problems, not the solutions yet. Right? That's where we are. Because I mean, structurally, you're not going to catch any tech company talking to any place where there are more than 20% Black people and actually giving them any real pathway. They might drop them off in a little charity league, or they might pop them off in a little hiring POC thing where they can scoop off a couple of them, but they're not going to do any sustained, like investment like they do in Bangalore or like, in Singapore or, in those places where you have those large swaths of highly qualified H-1B.
No, I'm looking at folks like, say, for example, folks that come from Cameroon. I'm looking at folks that come from places like even Haiti. I'm looking at folks that come from, Iraq, Iran. I'm looking at places of Zimbabwe. I'm looking at other places from around the world in which that you're seeing, in which that is like, hey, those companies aren't significantly there. And yet at the same token, like they're far more competitive.
I mean, I think there's well, I mean, I think one perspective wise, I mean, there's hundreds of millions of those people, and we're talking about maybe tens of thousands of them show up here. So ratio wise, it's probably not the same here.
But I'm not talking about the ones that just show up here in the United States. I'm just talking about the ones in which that are actually taking on the information to do something with it. Once they have access to it, remember, people that live over in third world countries, they have access to Android One, which is a lower tier version of Android in which that we have the luxury of using. And yet they're still able to produce some pretty phenomenal things at an alarming rate in comparison to and this is the part where I struggle, Princess. Like I'll throw out my bias here. Here's where I'm struggling. I'm struggling because of the fact is that I've seen a lot of kids that have come from a lot less. And I'm also looking at, say, for example, the kids that are born and raised here. And that the thing is like, these things are here. And it's whether or not, okay, if you have TikTok, then you've probably seen something as it pertains to within the tech space, something within learning. You probably just flipped through it and just skipped it. You just scrolled through it. But the tools are here and that you have them. And I'm probably sure that a lot of these things have been placed in these communities. It's just that they've just been overlooked. And yet, essentially, now it's like, okay, hey, like, for example, this whole ChatGPT conversation. And I'll keep it within the nucleus, Princess. I'll keep it within the nucleus of let's talk about the Black Finlit space. The Black financial literacy space and everything else, where everybody wants to create courses and all this other bullshit. Okay, let's talk about it, shall we? Like, can we talk about it, guys? Like, is that fair?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Okay, so let's look at that. Let's take that nucleus of, let's say, I don't know. I'm going to throw out a number of, let's say overall the space, let's say about 2 million people. Is that fair? Is that fair to give us a number of about 2 million people that were engaged and kind of like, no matter what part you were around, like within the financial literacy, and then also trying to be aware of other things that were happening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, like, I'll also give you, let's say 2020, when essentially nobody else went anywhere. Everybody was still sitting at their home, and they had a computer and everything else that they had access to. So the world was your oyster. And then ChatGPT came out really around, like, for the masses, it's like they started learning about this thing called ChatGPT around 2022. For other folks, they did have somewhat of an advantage of learning because of the fact that they knew about it. Like, but let's just take the overall masses learned about it in 2022. Okay, so we're now in our third year in. What have they done?
Essays. I'm
just asking you guys your opinion. Go ahead, Vic.
What I've kind of noticed is, like, there's excuse the dog barking, but there's like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a curve to. If one thing is knowing about it, but then like how you're using it, there's a curve there too. Because you might have something, I can use AI to do all these things I don't really feel like doing, or writing this document, or doing XYZ for me. But then you have another category of people who are like, wait, I can basically use this as a whole nother me and do XYZ with it. Mm-hmm. And then that brings you to that branch off point. Well, what about other forms of artificial intelligence? What about agents? What about these kinds of things that take even less oversight and effort on my part? So now that's why you see people now getting companies who maybe the teams used to have to require 30 people. Now they're like 5 to 10. But so it's like that curve between like how you can think to how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with that too.
So I'm struggling with this because I don't want to say if I sit here and tell you guys I agree with everything you're saying, I'll be lying to you.
That's okay.
I think, in my opinion, we have to break it down into age classifications. I got to give shout out to some of the folks that I know in tech that are Black, that are doing amazing things. They might not be the front runner, they might not be the lead or having their business, but they're key participators. Number one, in terms of the company that hired them, right? So if the argument or if the debate is where are people like us leading, before you learn how to drive a car, you got to at least learn how to walk. And we are already at the setback, already at the disadvantage, trying to catch up, like what Prentice was saying, based off of our educational background, right? I believe the previous episode when I said, hey, where are our guardian counselors? And you guys laughed, but I was dead serious that there has to be some kind of systemic insertion of guidance to be able to help, our kids, our younger generation be successful. And anytime I hear, people talk negative of the younger generation ahead of us, I really want to tell them to be quiet, because you are the problem because of how you raise them. You are the problem because of how you dealing or how you bringing them up to become whatever they end up becoming. Yes, there's so many different factors behind it. But so anyways, to go back into what I was trying to, my train of thought, we have to categorize it. If we're focusing on younger generation, that they're lost because they're not in that game, in that space or whatever it is, we have to get to a solution on how do we bring it to light for them to see that it's actually worth it. Let me tell you something. I mean, you guys know I'm an immigrant. The only thing that anyone cares about in life is wealth, success. The reason why a lot of immigrant families instill certain things to their kids is because they've seen that visual success, that it looks like not your athlete, because not everyone is going to be Ronaldo. Not everyone will be Messi. But if looked at it that you can be in class and you can learn because we all have this. And once you can learn,
a lot of money too.
Say that again.
So their agents make a shitload of money too.
Exactly. Not everyone is exactly. So you got to figure out. You can't go after the most sexy thing. I want to be an actor. I want to be all of this stuff, right? What a lot of people have deemed success is when they look at, you guys joke again every time I say it, the doctors, like Charles' sister, right? When you talk about the lawyer, when you talk about, the engineers, when you talk about these developers, they're not advertised. They're not visually successful. So you can only think about what you can visually see as success, and that's what you promote, right? So I think part of what we need to do is that our younger generation is really not at fault, because we have to instill that promotion of AI development is very crucial. Now, that is for that younger generation. Now, when we talk about our generation, that what are we not doing? How come you're not going into Coursera? Mark is really talking about all this amazing stuff, telling us about AI way back then. How come we're not actually going into Coursera and learning and all of that? Mark, you're right. How come we're not doing that? But let me tell you something. If I'm working 9 hours a day and I'm also investing and I do all of that stuff, like, yes, I could be in the, the tech field, but my tech work is already, costing me so much. That's why I'm going to, try to set aside some more time to, focus on, my business and all of that. Don't get me wrong. I think that's the right thing to do. Something has to give to be able to get that reward and all of that. But I guess I'm here playing devil's advocate. Is that I don't have that time, that luxury, because I got to take care of my kids. I got to do all this other stuff, right? I already got a good enough financial satisfying career, for example, right? So now and everyone varies, right? Because everyone okay. I'm just saying you can play the violin, that's fine. I'm just saying to everyone is different, right? Your mentality is I'm a leader. I want to be in that, I want to be the GM. Some people just want to be basketball players. Some people want to be the owners of that stuff, right? So when we chastise our community, and we got to be I guess I want to say we got to be the examples that we want them to see, because they might be lost. They might not have that stuff.
Right. All right, but why do they want to be?
But Marcus here, right? But I think there's a good example here to be made that you're here, right? But okay, all right, let's go back to me, right? I think so I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
There is nothing tech there at all, right? Not a single thing, right? I don't even think you could take all the letters in there and spell tech. You can't. There's no T there. So, it's like there's nothing involved in there at all, right? So I grew up my whole life, right? But I love tech. Right? But I love tech growing up, right? I was always one of the first people that had whatever consumer tech thing there, or games, this and that. I was reading about things. I'd go to Radio Shack and geek out, so I had the interest, but I had no place to talk about it or do it. And so I jumped out on the limb, because I was in a gifted school that involved like engineering, and was like, all right, I want to go to computer programming in U of H. Still had no support system, no nothing. So I didn't last very long there, right? But today's kids, right? I know today's kids, it seems like there should be a fundamental shift, because every one of these kids has a supercomputer in their hand that's connected to the internet. But the problem is that the walls are digital too, right? And because the algorithms basically just reflect back what you want to see and what you have been seeing and what you've been looking for, there is a way where you feedback loop yourself into the same small little hood where you are, right? Like, I mean, if you and I didn't notice this until I was at an Airbnb somewhere a couple of years ago, and I turned on the TV to watch YouTube, and somebody else's profile was on, and I was like, oh, if all you see is Lil Webby and BET After Dark reruns, and like you got a whole feed full of this stuff, and it's like this is all your feed is showing because this is all you've been looking for the last 5 years. Your Google's probably jacked up too. You probably have no idea what you're looking for. You're in the same hood, you're just in a digital hood. And so I think again, it's not passing off blame. It is just a simple reality that we need to have some place where there's something injected in, where you go, oh, this is what makes sense, right? And they have to have that foundation from the jump to even be able to separate shaft from the wheat, right? Like, is this good? Does this make sense? How do I know this makes sense? Am I going to do the opposite of everything else I've learned and been taught by the people that are in front of me? Or do I, just follow along because this is what I think success looks like, Like my understanding and redefinition of success has changed multiple times the further I've gotten away from New Orleans. And I love New Orleans. I love New Orleans, right? But the further I got away and the bigger I understood the world was and the bigger I understood things could be, then my idea of it changed, right? There's a lot of people in places that are even further backwards than New Orleans that are locked in their own little digital caves. And so I think if you can pierce that thing where they're living that allegory to cave and they're scared of shadows and thinking that they're gods, I think if you can pierce that reality for them, then we have an answer. But that's another one of those things that people don't pay attention to because they think everybody's got a phone, everybody's got YouTube, everybody's got access to this, but it's not innate like our stuff because we're looking for it, right?
Yeah, I agree in that sense that information is always out there, but the information is okay. I'll give you an example. My wife's newsfeed is totally different from my newsfeed, right? So that should speak a lot of volume, right there, because I'm like, wait, when did you learn that, or what are you talking about? Where is this? Now I will say this as well. Even though I love tech, I love everything. I'm not gonna let what Vic said, just go away. I think he mentioned something about pop the balloon. That's what people want to watch. I think there's a space for entertainment in people's life. If you're just all about, I'm just focused on tech. I want to be the next, Zuckerberg. I want to be whatever it is. You're just gonna live. Even when you become that, you're not gonna be satiable. You're going to be depressed. You got to find your way of getting your outlet. Pop the balloon. I don't have any issues with that.
No.
Entertainment. I'm
going to call bullshit. I'm going to call bullshit on that one.
I think that's an entertaining thing. I have no issues with it.
Mute today. Bye.
I gotta call bullshit on that one because here's the
on which part? On what aspect?
On the part where it's like you're gonna be depressed and everything else. I don't believe that. I mean, look. In order for me to get to the places in which that I had to get to, there were friends that I stopped talking to that ultimately that I cut out of my life. There were honestly, I stopped going out to clubs. I honestly stopped doing a bunch of shit that ultimately that it was fun in the moment, but then at the same token, it's like, look, it wasn't getting me anywhere. It was just a waste of money, a waste of bill. Hell, I'm gonna even go even a step further. Hell, when I was dating, I would literally tell the female that I was dating, I said, look, I only see this relationship only going to 6 months because the same reasons why you like me is gonna be the same reason why you hate me. And ultimately, never since the fail. And when it came time where it's like, hey, I need more time with you and blase, 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 I was like, look, there's the door. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord should have split you. Because I was focused. And ultimately, and the reason why I learned that area of focus is because of the fact is, real talk, let me remove the dumb shenanigans of Elon Musk. You have to look at the entrepreneurs that came out during the time when he was an entrepreneur. Literally, there's a reason why they call him PayPal Mafia for a reason. Because every single person that was a part of that group, they became successful. It wasn't just PayPal. They went on to create other things because they were just that focused. And one of the most interesting interviews that he said was like, look, there's 168 hours in an entire week, a 7-day schedule. You may work 40 hours of that at a 9-to-5 job. Okay, that's a company that subscribed to your time and said, okay, hey, we're going to pay you for this subscription on a monthly basis for your time. Okay, that's 40 hours that's taken out of 168 hours. You still have 128 hours left. So I'm failing to see like, okay, hey, like, you know, and you say like entertainment and everything else, and don't worry.
So you don't need to sleep?
How many hours do I need
in that time? You factor in that out?
60 hours? Is that 60 hours?
In the words of my grandfather, sleep when you die. But anyway,
look, I mean, look.
Mental health is a true thing, bro. What I'm trying to tell you guys, talking about. Go ahead.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But I also believe that we are also making that shit a crutch in the sense of using that as an excuse for why it's. But I'm saying that you're telling me how it might be, and I'm telling you how it is right now. Like, people are literally using that as an excuse as it pertains to everything, as a blanket excuse for everything of why is it that they're not out there executing? Why is it that they're not out doing what they're supposed to be doing? Why is it that their life is not panning out the way that they did? And nobody's sitting back and going back to the root of the formula of the decisions in which that you, the adult, the decisions in which that you made. Like, yo, all these decisions, all these things that you see are by your own hand. As an adult, I'll see you. I will literally never disagree with y'all. I always believe that children are innocent because why? It's like, look, I was being raised. So look, if we have to point the gun, all right, parents, adults, what is your excuse now? If you had to stand forth today for every single decision in which, or every lack of decision that you did not make, and it's like you had opportunity when the opportunity was there, but yet you spent 4 hours, 6 hours sitting there watching Pop the Balloon or 20v1 and all this other bullshit, versus essentially, and here's an even crazier part. Here's a crazy stat. You ready for this? For all those people out there that are like talking about courses this and courses that, Coursera costs $300 a year. You can take unlimited courses.
There's a lot of free courses.
And on top of that, you can use a lot of those things to get certified. So why am I going to go out there and spend $25,000 for so-and-so's course that doesn't even fucking certify me?
Hey,
sorry.
$2 in the jar. $2 in the jar.
You know, like,
I must have got somebody heated. Relax, bro.
I think a lot of the struggle people have comes from that lack of focus. Like, I've never been happier than when I was very focused on one thing or like a set number of things. Like when you have that drive, that motivation, it's when you're scattered that usually, at least for me, I find that's when you're at your worst.
You know what?
But I wanted to touch on something about the creativity piece. I thought about what you said, Tunde. Because yes, you can have people that are like, maybe they're not as advanced in certain ways, but just like how you can look at Apple as one company and then discover, hey, well, what's beneath that? What's behind the scenes there? Or like the athlete with the agent. That curiosity needs to be there too, where you're asking questions, what's behind this, right? If you're watching YouTube, what's behind YouTube? And then that could be the thing that springboards you into that level of like interest to make you want to go do something.
Every single one of these people that you guys mentioned that are ultimately revered, they made mistakes along the way. They had to take their medicine. Look, Steve Jobs, you just mentioned Apple. This man got booted out of his own company because he failed. He got booted out of his own thing. They gave him a Spartan kick out of Apple. Dude went over and sat in the penalty box, went and started working on Disney Pixar. Hence the reason why it's so successful is because of the fact that he put his energy into Disney Pixar. Made that successful. And then essentially they welcomed him back to Apple. Yeah. I mean, like, look, it's like, okay, you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. But the thing is like, everybody's so afraid of making mistakes. And like the craziest part to me, and you guys know, I'm not going to mention like family business, but I will talk about something else. I see a lot of people out there that fail to move because they're so afraid to make a mistake. They're so afraid to fail, or that the fact is that it won't work. You're so willing to listen to people who've never even stepped foot into into a tech company who have never and have never even written a single line of code, who have never done a code review or anything, could never even tell you what a text, could never even explain a tech stack to you at all. And then you're gonna literally sit there and listen to them as if their work is fucking gospel and manna from up above, and ultimately stop yourself from moving forward. I don't understand it. And the crazy part about it is, shout outs to all those people who did those Airbnb courses, all those folks who did trucking courses, all those folks who did vending machine courses. Hell, maybe some people were successful, but a lot of people weren't. And at the same amount of money that they were throwing in towards those things, they could have put their money towards the things in which that were actually working, that were ultimately working for their counterparts that are now succeeding in arenas that they did not. And then it's like, oh, and the crazy part about it is, when the people were out there telling you, oh, well, now I'm the hater. You know, it's like, you know, shout out to Steven Jackson. He said it best. The truth sounds like hate to those who hate to hear the truth. And I think the thing is that we hate to hear the most is, it's like we make a lot of excuses as it pertains to why is it that we can't be, why is it that, what are the barriers that must be, and everything else. And it's like, look, man, there comes a certain point in time where it's like, you got to sit back and look in the mirror and like try to lie to yourself, or ultimately just sit back and tell your truth. So
I think when we look at where we are here, I mean, we all got great points. I understand what Tunde is saying, but Tunde, here's the thing where you and I would disagree. And the good thing about the group chat, we can disagree. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are you know, we're you know, you're a family man. You're right. You got kids. You got soccer. Whatever they gotta play. You got a lot going on. Because anybody got a board up that got, you know, all their stuff lined up, what they got to do, man.
Hey, man. But they don't know about that.
You all got it, bro. No, I'm giving you your props.
No, look, bro, we're giving you your flowers while you're here, bro. Like, that's legit.
Much better than me, because I'm trying to keep it all up here, okay? But the one thing you know, that Mark said, I mean, Prentice hit on it, and even Vic, is that the difference today is so many people spend so many hours on this thing, scrolling. I mean, hours. They showed a thing on CBS, man, where kids are spending hundreds of hours just scrolling, watching other people, instead of figuring out, how do I either become that person?
True.
How do I become successful? True. But you just being entertained. You're not putting anything to action. Not all kids, but it's a large majority of them. And you made a point. Some of them are getting anxiety now that I'm falling behind. Yeah, falling behind, but you got this thing that's giving you all the info, but you're not putting it to use. You're just out here watching everybody else be great instead of saying, wait a minute, click, turn that light bulb on and say, if I go replicate what they did, or go get in my own lane for what I can do, then I can be great. And focus, I think somebody else talked about focus. I can speak for my own too. When Miles is focused, that's when he's at his best.
Yep.
Man, when he's not focused, it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Got a gun. Nothing to death.
Yeah.
Always will. But I know he needs focus.
Yep.
Okay. I just, it was instilled in us because we're older. Look,
we're forced.
My father would put a foot in your behind if you wasn't focused. Okay.
Pick a switch and get it.
It's calculus time. It's physics time. You don't have no choice. Sit down at that dining room table, get that homework done.
They'll never understand the psychological warfare that we had to go through.
Yeah.
If Johnny has 3 apples.
No, forget that. You want to know the 2 worst psychological warfares that you had to deal with as a kid growing up in our era? And I'm going to actually possibly add myself to Uncle Charles and Princess's era. 1, wait till we get home.
Ooh.
2,
see, I got high.
Go pick your own Switch. Do you know the type of psychological warfare that you have to go through to 1? Yeah. You know that the whooping is coming and you have to pick your own Switch.
But you got to satisfy. But you got to satisfy the whooper because you can't pick a bad switch.
Thank you, because if not, you're sent down to go get another one. And then the second one is like the wait till you get home. You like, oh no, I would rather take this like now. So then that way, and then you try to do all the things to make them forget, and they don't.
Yep. Okay, so look, we know we got
to get to solution. I know my wife just texted me. She was like, "Look, stop cussing."
Yeah.
So ultimately, I said too many cuss bombs. Look, you guys are not accustomed to seeing this type of. You're not. Okay, I'll give you solution, Mark, because obviously you guys don't like. You guys don't like King the Conqueror, Mark. Obviously. So
the King the Conqueror, and he didn't let the flamethrowers fly today.
Listen, because I got a lot of bullets in my belt, and like I said, for a person who I'm the type of person to keep receipts to be left alone.
Yep.
And so I'll just say this. It's time that essentially, like, I think that like one of the most interesting stories that I'll give you guys is when I was in high school and I was finishing up my junior year. One of my mentors, shout out to Judge McCullough, which honestly, he's one of the individuals that I owe everything to. He literally like church was over and I was getting ready to go do whatever I was going to do for, after church is over, like most young adult boys. And he stopped me for a second. He's like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, sure. When the judge wants to talk to you, you listen, because he's a judge for real. And, he literally sat back and said to me, he just gave me a stern look, like looked me dead in the eye and said, it's time. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, I was like, what do you need me to do or whatever? He was like, no, Mark, it's time. And I'm like, a little more context here. And he was like, it's time that essentially that you start seizing your potential and start doing things in which not only just what you're capable of, but also challenging yourself to discover what you could be or where is it that you haven't discovered yet. And it's time. And the thing is, you're not going to do that if you're just doing this on a consistent basis. I didn't even have college even in my pure view. Like I had no want to go to college until I sat down and spoke to him. And so I'm not saying this as it pertains to leading into the college conversation. I'm saying this in the sense that I'm telling, like, I'm looking at each and every single one of you, if you're still watching, because I know I said some things that were pretty, like, hellfire and brimstone. So now you're getting solution. It's time. And I'm also going to go a little bit further because I always believe that we build upon generations that have also molded us. Not only it's time, but time is running out. So when I mean by it's time to put aside, like, Tunde, I have no problem with people wanting to go out and have a little fun and everything else. Like, if you do well and everything else, and if you work hard, then you should enjoy the things in which that you've done. But if there's nothing there that stacks with your name, that you can literally say, okay, hey, my name has done this, then it's definitely time. If you've just been like living just for the 9 to 5 in the same rat race, I mean, and especially if you've been doing it for 10, 15 years, it's kind of like, aren't you tired of running the same race over and over only to know that you're going to see the same, like, sushi restaurant that you've already passed like 15 times, 20 times, 200 times? Like, the thing is, it's like, it's time in the sense that, okay, hey, like, here's some resources, $300. I'm not endorsing Coursera. I'm just telling you that this is a resource that is there, and I understand that it works because I've seen people use it. Take the time to like literally educate yourself beyond the world in which that you see. There's a far greater world out there. Like, there's a lot of, like, put this into perspective. There's a lot of you that have stayed within the same city and have never went outside of your city, outside of your state. You've never ventured out. There's people that are within your family that have never seen the world. Like, there's a whole different world in Latin America, Europe, Asia, Africa. There's so many things out there. And it's like, there's more to life than watching people. Like, there's more to life than watching people live it. I'll say it again. There's more to life than watching people live it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tunde and I, we're huge fans of LeBron James. But I understood, and I'm probably sure that Tunde understood, we'll never be LeBron James. but it doesn't mean that we can't strive for greatness in our own respective categories to ultimately want to be great. Like for me, I want to be great in the sense that where, you know, if I'm blessed to have kids, or hell, my nieces and my nephews can literally sit back and say, look, my uncle participated in building that. You know, that has my family's name a part of that. You know, greatness is attached to that. Like that's like I always say, like, you know, I even to this day, and these guys know it, I work my ass off. So that way there's already people around the world who know who I am. But there's also a vast portion of people who don't know who I am. I work my ass off so then that way one day, whenever I walk into the room, they know who I am and I don't have to work so that way you understand it. So solutions. One, recognize that it's time and also time is running out. Two, don't just use AI in the sense of just chat GPT just to answer questions that you can ultimately Google. Like, I think that the thing is challenge yourselves. Like one of the things that the come up series is not a call out. I'm never gonna be the person that just calls out like, you know, positions and everything else and all this other stuff. People always say I talk in riddles, but I don't. I just try to I literally sit back and say, look, I'm not gonna be the type of person that's gonna spoon feed you anything. I'll teach you certain things, I'll teach you the fundamentals of things, but then there comes a certain point where you have to want to sink or swim by yourself. So the resources of like places like Coursera, which are reputable, in which that they can give you knowledge. Like hell, you can even learn college related material from a lot of those subjects, and even potentially get college credit if you wanted to. There's that part. Also, change your information diet. Change your information diet. Like a lot of you guys have Apple iPhones and don't even realize, oh yeah, feel free to, you can name it out there today. It doesn't have to be me. Like, look, he mentioned Udemy.
Bro, you preaching, you're cooking,
okay, I'll stop.
This stuff is just the aroma is just, you know, really nice, and so I don't want to kill the flow, bro. Look,
the aroma.
That stuff smells nice, bro. Keep going. I'm learning. I'm taking in what you're talking about. So keep going.
Okay, so we got Coursera, we got Udemy.
Mm-hmm.
Try to challenge yourself. Try to challenge these platforms that you use on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. Use ChatGPT. Challenge yourself to learn something else. Like if it has this knowledge database or if it has this knowledge bank, challenge what it knows. Mm-hmm. Challenge the tools. Like I kept telling people, like, look, if you need help, if you need inspiration, you want to know one of the things that I do. Here's a secret thing. Here's a secret that I do. I'm actually giving it away for the first time because I've never done this. A lot of times I go to tech, I go to read articles on TechCrunch and VentureBeat and all these other places. You know why I read it? I don't just read it for the competition or for the what's happening. I read it in a sense of competition. I want to know, like, okay, hey, like, okay, this is what people wanted to invest in. Can I build something better than that? Mm-hmm. Can I invest in something better than that? Can somebody build this better than that? They raised $25 million for this. Somebody invested $25 million, $50 million, $100 million into this. Can it be built better? You know, where are the market opportunities? Like you start to see patterns and you start to see trends. Like I keep telling people, like one of the beautiful things that I love about being us is the fact that we're creative and we're competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just don't use it.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality. We can literally sit back and have a who's the GOAT debate. And like, I could go to a barbershop where I could literally sit there and listen to dudes spit off tons of stats and everything else, but none of them will build a stat platform for people to debate with. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity that's within our realm of possibilities. That maybe the thing is, and it's like people do these detoxes, and the crazy thing is when I see people do these social media detoxes, and then they're like, okay, and it's always crazy because when you hear people talk about, oh, I did the social media detox, I was off of social media for 30, 60 days, whatever. and then they come back and it's like, yeah, you're the same person.
You went right back to it.
Like, what's the point? Like, if you were gone for 30 to 60 days, what did you build? What did you participate in? What did you learn? What skill did you pick up? Like, you can pick up a skill in 30 to 60 days.
For sure.
So it's like, you know, and it's like, the thing is like, and the crazy part about it is like, you can't challenge your kids to be something that you're not. Like, that's one of the things that I see where it's like a lot of times where like parents will talk to me and they'll send me messages like about their child and everything else. And the thing that just sits in the back of my mind, like the child is just sitting there talking to me. And it's like many times they're afraid to just speak up and say what there is, because of the fact is like you're talking at the child. And it's more so in the sense that I tend to notice that, is it you talking to the child, or is it more so you're talking at the child because you're talking at yourself? Like where, like Prentice said, there's these walls in which that we built. Well, the only way that we have to do it is like, look, first, let's self-examine. Let's that's not even a word. Let's self-examine. Let's self-examine. What is it that we've done? Like wherever your age is, what have you done up to now? Is it something that people would want to talk about? Is it something that somebody would want to read about? Is it something that would inspire somebody else? No? Okay, time to reevaluate. Then the next thing is like, okay, hey, well, what is it that we're going to build from here? Like, what is it that we're going to learn from here? Like, look, ignorance is catchy. All day, every day. It will forever be there. You know what won't be there? Opportunity knocks, and it goes on to the next door.
Time will not be there. I don't want to interrupt you, but I am real quick. I think all that you're saying does make a lot of sense. I think, and to preface it, all the conversations or the things I was saying earlier was based off of the extreme factors, right?
Yep.
There's no case where I don't think everyone should strive for excellence. That's the way I put it for my daughter. You're not just going to be, a doctor, for example, or my son. You're going to be the best doctor. The thing that you mentioned about people tell their kids, to be like them, or to you gotta be better than my kids. Got to be way better than me, but I have to set the bar really high for them to surpass it. Right? That is for sure a non-starter. There's no question behind it. And some of my nieces and nephews say, "Oh, Uncle, it's your big age. I'm still in school." I think everyone should always have that mindset. And I think it was Victor that said it very well, the mindset of curiosity. I am taking courses, and I'll continue to take courses. The only thing I didn't do, I haven't surpassed my dad yet, is getting 2 PhDs like he did. I have no passion, no interest in getting PhD. Okay, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't continue doing further learning.
Yeah.
I think learning comes in so many different capacity, different, different avenue. What you were saying though is that if for example, I just mentioned my dad has 2 PhD, you guys chuckled. If my dad is not a scholar, why would I've not seen someone that would show me that. If someone didn't, bring it up to me, right? Mark, you made a really good point that you said it's now time, because Judge McCullough, looked at you and said it. You're now being a judge, McCullough, for so many people that will watch this, right? I think what ends up happening is that not a lot of people care enough to wanting others to be as good or better than them. Whether it's, family, or whether it's, distance, or you just seeing a community of generations coming, after us. And I think what we're doing, what you're saying, is very phenomenal, because you're looking at all of them and saying, hey, we do care. I don't want it to take it to like, oh, you guys are not doing good enough, because like I said, I do know quite a few tech folks in AI that are, amazing people right now, that we want it to grow more than that. We don't want, it's about what, 10% or whatever in America, the 10% of this whole AI developers are African American. Why is it not 40% like Asians? You know what I mean? Why can't it be more? So I think this whole spill is, we do care. We do want you to be your excellent self. There's a time to watch Pop the Balloon. It might not be 24/7.
We are not. This is not an endorsement of that show, by the way.
It's not an endorsement. Netflix already got it. Netflix already got it. Shout out to the producers and so forth. But it's kind of like what,
which makes our point.
That makes my point. That makes my point.
You don't see Tyrone and Tech picked up by Netflix for $50 million.
You don't. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, here's a challenge though. Before you continue, here's a challenge to the folks who are at Netflix. If you're or any of these streaming platforms, if you're willing to do a Pop the Balloon, create a reality show in which that people have to create like innovative companies, and then those companies get funded. Do that. Let's see that. Like, let them compete.
Yeah.
Like literally show, literally show what it would look like if you literally took everybody through Y Combinator and turned it into a reality show. I'd love to see that.
In how long? Because I mean, there's a lot of logistics.
You can do 8 episodes. You can do 8 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. Be honest.
Thank you.
Hey,
now that's the
you guys heard it from us. You guys heard it from us.
I wouldn't even come for anybody if they literally created the show and it's like, look, we didn't get our credit. I don't care. My thing is, I'd rather just see it on screen.
And did it affect a lot of lives positively?
There's 200 million people.
There's black accelerators that are existing right now that could whip out an iPhone and get on CapCut and put together 3 or 4 series on YouTube and open up the door and just basically, because look, I say, look, you Y Combinator, YC they're the GOAT for this. They opened the door on like they are the first people I had saw that was talking about like the beginning of a startup, right? The one person, the 2 people that have something on a napkin that's talking to a VC like, hey man, I need to have a dream, like everybody else starts off with, okay, well, I got my seed or I got my A round or I'm this, they were talking about the beginning. So like black accelerators, black founders, especially these ones like Serena Williams, right? That ties it both together. Serena Williams has a venture fund.
She has a venture fund, and nobody
venture fund that's tied that is tied with her inventor husband, co-founder of Reddit. If they turned on a camera with their teams of Black and Latinx founders and put it on a show, everybody would watch because it's Serena, it's Alexis, it's Black people, it's tech, it's drama, it's money. We're saying too much. Why Serena, holler at us. we got teams, man. You got teams. We could, really. It's it's one of those things where, you're right. I mean, and to the point of the parents, right, from a teacher perspective, the thing I learned is that a lot of parents don't know how to be parents. They don't know how to be parents. They don't have a clue. And I think that probably goes to their generation before them, right? Because, you have parents that come, and drop their kids off and they expect their kids not only to be educated, but also be raised by the teacher, like it's a really crazy idea that, we come in and we have to be the dad, the mom, the teacher, the psychiatrist, the therapist, the nutritionist and all these things. And then teachers burn out and they can't even get their first objective together, right? Which is educating. And so the kids suffer in a lot of different ways. And so, to your point, parents got a lot of responsibility for this new generation. They have a lot. They have a whole lot. Now, you have outside factors where, this economy has murdered a lot of parents, right? Working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, still can't afford an apartment, right? Things are rough. Things suck. You're depressed. But the number one thing you exist on this earth for is the things that you had, your kids, right? If you have them, that's what you exist for, to make them better than you. And so whatever you got left, you know, I know it sounds from a place of privilege, but you got to do it, man. I don't care. Like, you got to do it. And so, yeah, to that point, you've got to expose them to things. I mean, my parents didn't go anywhere, right, when they grew up, because they were from the deep South. They couldn't, right? But they exposed us and took us places, museums, different parts of the city, the country, the state. You know, they took us places. I'm taking my kids, you know, out of the country. You know, I'm showing my kids how to code, how to use systems, how to, you know, work on entrepreneurship, which is something that, again, my blue collar, working as nurses, working as postal worker parents had no frame of reference at, right? They were just working and surviving. But now that I know, my kids are thinking about, how do I start a business, right? How do I become a doctor and use this other thing tech-wise? How do I become a marine biologist and utilize, you know, these things for this now? And that's what we have to do as parents. That is part of the solution there, right? You're building that expectation, and you're building that world that they can play in, that things become normal. It's normalized and it's expected, and it's the expectation, the bottom floor. You're going to succeed, period. Like, you are going to succeed, right? Like, I tell my daughters, I'm like, you guys are 12, 14, and 16-year job that I have been working on. You are a project. You are a startup I have been working on for 16 years. The things that you are going through right now, I was planning before you got out. So that's where we are right now. And I think we have to step up and take responsibility as parents. And that's the core of it, because the kids can't, you know, if they grow in rotten soil, they're not going to be the plants that they want to be. They can be, you know.
Okay. So, Vic, because I know that you got to drop in a second. And so we're probably going to, we're coming to the close. So what do you got to say? What are your thoughts?
I would say, honestly, it kind of goes back to what I said before, like, focus. And I'm guilty as charged. Don't get me wrong. Like, I catch myself scrolling on Twitter or whatever it may be, but it's like, if you were to do an audit of how you spend your time throughout the week, just like every hour, like, what did I do for the last hour? You'd be amazed how much time you actually waste doing stuff that gets you nowhere. So it's like a process of elimination. Oh, there you go. You just if you could get rid of the stuff that's holding you back or just not getting you anywhere, eventually that space has to get filled with something more productive if you're intentional about it. I'll say that part. That's the caveat. You got to be intentional about it. But especially for people like my age, when you do have that phone in your hand and it's all day, you got 8 hours of screen time, like, at least let the 8 hours be something that you can learn from, or that you're using for some kind of purpose that can help you get somewhere to where you want to be, accomplish the goals you want to get. Yeah.
Go ahead, Uncle Charles, because you've been very quiet. So.
No, I'm just going to say, you know, as I wrap up here, this conversation has been great. I think we've gotten multiple viewpoints, but I think we've all ended up in the same place. We have a lot of work to do. We don't have time to waste in getting that work done. We have to start now. Parents have to start now. Uncles, aunts, people in your life have to start now. We got to stop making excuses, because the rest of the world is continuing to move. Whether we're going to participate or not, it's going to move forward. So I'm not saying every kid wants to be a software developer. Every kid wants to, you know, do that. But what I am saying is, whatever you're going to do, put your best foot forward.
Yep.
Entertainment is a fleeting market. It is who's most popular at this point in time. And I laugh, you know, you guys know one of my favorite shows of all time is Law and Order SVU. That show been on 20-something years.
Yep.
How many other shows can say they've been on 20-something years? It's not very many.
Right.
Okay. But it had a market. It had something that everybody liked, that watched it, and it kept getting renewed. It's kind of like your career. You keep getting renewed if you keep doing good work. But now with the move of AI and all this other stuff, we've already seen where people are imitating people and wait a minute, that's AI. But it looks so real. It is scary real that I could be imitated by something that Mark writes in his basement that took him 20 minutes. Oh, he got Uncle Charles talking every day. And I'm thinking, that ain't me. But if people don't know any better, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
So I feel what you're saying. We have to move. We have to move and stop falling for the buffoonery of people who have no clue. Now, I'm going to say, entertainment is one thing, and a lot of people going to talk. Okay, but if you never wrote a lick of code, if you never did a review, if you never even wrote a true LLM before,
at all,
please stop.
And that's not easy, by the way.
It's not easy. You can play at it, and it'll give you some response. But is that really what you were looking for? It's a whole different thing. Because I'm telling you, I'm learning every day. Every time I go into LLM and drop something in there, like if I change one word in the whole thing, the LLM will come back with a different meaning. So, but in the grand scheme of things, guys, I think this has been a great episode. I think we dropped a lot of information. I feel like some people are going to take this and really put it to use. Some people are going to take it and say, well, it's not for me, and that's okay. We're not for everybody. But I'm going to leave it at that. The world is continuing to move. Other countries are continuing to move. We don't want to be left behind. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Tunde?
Yeah, I think it's very important when we hear stuff like this, or even when I even hear stuff like this, right? I have to go mull on it, sleep on it, and then really figure out what does it mean to me. And what I mean by that is that you have to have a plan. Mark's plan is not going to be Tunde's plan. You have to have a plan on, okay, they're talking about AI. What does that look like? Oh, okay, I'm just going to go take a Coursera course on AI. And then, I did it. What next? That's not a plan. You need to, sit down, have a plan. That plan should, dictate where do you want to be? Who are your role models? Who are your mentors in that field? Let's say we're talking about AI. Just the same way Levick mentioned, you watch YouTube. You have to have that curiosity, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, you have to be a little bit very curious to it. And then that can help shape your plan. And then you can now, don't dwell too long on your plan, but have a well-structured plan and then have an executing mindset. And I think that comes into that focus that, all the other aspects that we all talked about, execute. And the bottom line is there's nothing that, comes overnight. Everything that we're talking about, what is one of the big things that we're thinking about? It's for the kids, for the upcoming generation. Even us ourselves, there are things that, we can learn from it and we can, take with us, but it's not going to happen overnight, right? But we have to be the change that we want to see in others. And consequently, it just keeps on duplicating itself, right? And it becomes a very, very powerful tool when we move as a unit, right? So that's where I would leave it.
Okay.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for watching. We went through a lot. We said a lot. I'm probably sure that this is going to stem on other conversations that need to be had. But this one was like, it goes where it goes. We didn't even get to even talk about really very much economic stuff in this conversation, but it was more so like heartfelt. And again, for those in whom are like, hey, Mark, the cussing and everything else, I apologize if I rubbed you.
It is what it is. You just owe me some money. That's all. Okay. I'm joking.
Right.
I'm joking.
The electronic snare jar is in use.
Yeah, but I can't wait till the day that Uncle Charles joins the swear jar. It's coming. But yeah, no, I mean, to a certain degree, if there's children watching, yeah, I apologize. If it's a bunch of adults that are watching, I don't apologize because ultimately that's just how I feel. That's the vernacular that I wanted to use, and I used it with purpose. If that's all you heard, unfortunately, I'm sorry. Go back and rewind this and listen to it for its entirety. But we really mean well, and I know that for myself and for these gentlemen that are here. Like, we don't have to be here, but we're trying to have these conversations because we need to normalize these conversations in order for us as a people to move forward and really start to think and say, okay, hey, well, what are we doing here? Are we the crazy ones? Is everybody else crazy? Or what's happening? And I think that ultimately we started that, and we're going to keep this movement going. So, gentlemen of the swears, I thank you guys so much for giving us your time, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until then, we're out, y'all. Have a great week.